What happens though? The one vice you're seeing is jealousy, and the other vice is arrogance. These two break us. In Akhir zaman, look at the tradition. You will find people with great arrogance, and you'll find people with great jealousies. In a tradition, it says if a person is jealous, on their deathbed, they will die the death of a kafir. The tradition says that they will, Allama Dastaghaib has also mentioned this. If a person has jealousy inside of them, not only does it burn all of your iman, but jealousy also means that you'll die the death of a kafir on your deathbed. Where have we seen this? I've narrated this 3 years ago on this pulpit. I'll narrate it again. Ayatollah Gul Paygani was giving Bath al-Kharij, was giving Dars of Kharij. And at that moment he begins to cry. And as he begins to cry, he mentions something. He says that there was a friend of mine. And that friend of mine said to me, he called me. He said, why don't you come to me? He was an ex-friend of mine. Why don't you come to me because I'm dying? He says he went to that friend of his who was his ex-friend. He went there. That friend looks at him and says, I'm passing away now. I'm leaving this world now. But I have a question to ask you. If you can answer me this question. He says, what's the question? He says, wasn't I more hardworking than you were? He says, yes, you were more hardworking than I was. Wasn't I working all night when you weren't working all night? He says, yes, you were working all night when I wasn't working all night. Wasn't I poorer than you? Wasn't I only having water and a loaf of bread? He says, you were only having water and a loaf of bread. Turns around and says, wasn't I then striving harder than you to become a mujtahid? He says, yes, didn't I become a mujtahid before you? Yes, you did become a mujtahid before me. Then he says, get me the Quran. Got him the Quran, opens the Quran, spits in the Quran, dies a kafir. At that moment he says, why did Allah make you a marja and not me? Jealousy was in his heart, deep down in his heart. Where did it manifest? It manifested on the point of his death. The tradition now says, it says if anyone has that jealousy in them, what is jealousy? Jealousy means this. Somebody else's child does better than your child in school, you start becoming jealous. Somebody has more money than you, has a greater position than you, becomes a president, and you're thinking to yourself, why didn't I become that president? I lost in this election. I lost gaining this position. I didn't get that money. What happens then? That jealousy is sufficient enough that if it harbors inside of you, you can die the death of a kafir. You can be destroyed. Great people have been destroyed. Forget you. First person to be jealous was who? Iblis. You find this jealousy within history. You see this jealousy within there. Why? Why did he get it? Why did a 33-year-old boy get wilaya when I am in my 60s and he's only 33? What leads to that then? Leads to what? Jealousy leads to kufr. Understand this. Jealousy leads to kufr. So the one thing that we must do within Akhir Zaman is to make sure that we remove that jealousy from our hearts. Because as long as we have that jealousy, we will not progress. Look in the Quran and see. Let me mention to you a tradition in the Quran. If you go to the time of Musa, in the time of Musa, if you look at the Bani Israel, they were much advanced than what we were. Some of them had Isma Adam. When they say kun fayakun took place, they were able to raise the dead. Whatever they wanted, they could do that. You found certain scholars of who? Bani Israel. There was one very famous one, Bal'am ibn Bawra, very famous scholar of who? Of the Bani Israel. He had Isma Adam, he had one name of the 72 names of Allah, where the tradition says, it says that who? Asif with one letter of the name of Isma Adam brings back what? The throne of Bilqis in a blink of an eye. This person had this, but there was one thing inside of his heart, that was jealousy inside. If you look at the tradition, he trained over 1,000 scholars of the Bani Israel. He was from the family of Lut alayhi salam. But the tradition says this, that when Musa made a declaration that my representative after me, my wasi after me, is going to be a youth by the name of Yusha bin Nun, he looks up to himself and he says, I've trained all of these people. Isma Adam, a part of it is in my hands. Whatever I ask for from Allah becomes true, fulfillment. Why is it that this child has become the wasi and not me? You know what the tradition says? The tradition says that the people of the area that he would live in came to him and said, we want you to pray against Musa. Says, why do you want me to pray? Don't you know he's a Nabi of Allah? Says, no, pray against him because they want to come and take allegiance from us. And if they take allegiance, we'll become subservient to them. Somehow they forced him. The tradition says he gets on a donkey. He goes towards the mountain. As he goes towards the mountain, the donkey wouldn't go. Again, he pushes the donkey to go. Forces. Eventually gets to the top of the mountain. And then the tradition says the donkey is inspired by Allah. And the donkey says, don't you know what you're doing? You're going up against a prophet of God. Are you not fearful of yourself? Look at your maqam. You have letters of Isma Adam. It's possible you're going to get destroyed. Don't do this, don't perish. At that moment, he ignores the donkey, comes on top of the mountain. In the tradition, it says when he starts to mention Nothing comes out of his tongue shakes, he falls on the ground and begins to cry. He says, I've destroyed this world, I've destroyed the hereafter. Here's a man on this maqam, imagine, destroyed this world, destroyed the hereafter. You think it can't happen to you? Be very careful and vigilant. Why does it